I declare open this public hearing of the Senate Select Committee on the National Broadband Network and welcome you here today. This is a public hearing and a Hansard transcript of the proceedings is being made. Today's proceedings will also be broadcast live via the Australian Parliament House website. Before the committee starts taking evidence, I remind all witnesses that in giving evidence they are protected by parliamentary privilege. It's unlawful for anyone to threaten or disadvantage a witness on account of evidence given to a committee, and such action may be treated by the Senate as a contempt. It's also a contempt to give false or misleading evidence. A witness called to answer a question for the first time should state their full name and the capacity in which they appear. The committee prefers all evidence to be given in public, but under the Senate's resolutions, witnesses have the right to request to be heard in private session. And if you were able to give the committee notice, that's very helpful. If a witness objects to answering a question, they should state the ground upon which the objection is taken, and the committee will determine whether it will insist on an answer having regard to the ground which is claimed. The witness may request to give the answer in camera if it proceeds in that way. I remind the witness that the Senate has resolved that an officer of the Department or of the Commonwealth or of a state shall not be asked to give opinions on matters of policy, and given that's not relevant to today, I'll leave that bit. Anyway, welcome. Welcome here today. If you could please state your name and the capacity in which you're formally appearing.
Sure. Stephen Rue, Chief Financial Officer of NBN.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rue. Do you have an opening statement?
I don't, other than to thank the committee for giving me the opportunity today. You obviously had a long session on Tuesday, and I appreciate the fact you gave me leave of absence. You would appreciate I'm in the middle of some significant transactions, so thank you for giving me the time.
Thank you, Mr. Rue. We'll go straight to questions if that's the case. Senator Conroy.
Thanks, and thanks for being able to be available, Mr. Rue. We appreciated the flexibility.
No, thank you.
Now, Mr. Morrow was originally scheduled. You just want to, just because other people will have seen his name on the appearance list, could you just give us an update? Mr. Morrow's unable to join us.
Yeah, Mr. Morrow informed me at lunchtime that he had an urgent appointment and he wouldn't be appearing. So I actually don't know what that is.
Okay, no worries. Thank you for that. Now, I just note there's a report in today's Business Spectator that Aris has won the NBN HFC deal. Are you in a position to confirm that that's the case, Mr. Rue?
Again, I haven't read that article. As far as I was concerned, there was still some discussion as to the final tender. I may be out of date.
Well, you're the CFO. I would be hoping a substantial contract like that would pass across your desk.
No recommendation has been made to the board at this stage.
Okay, thank you for that. Now, Mr. Rue, NBN Co's 2014-17 corporate plan. If I was being polite, I'd call it threadbare. I think in your absence, I said to Mr. Morrow that if you turned up and were a public company, the corporate plod ASIC would be having a chat with you, given the lack of information contained in it. So I just wanted to ask a couple of issues around the creation of it. I'm assuming that when you constructed the corporate plan, you did actually calculate forecasts over, usually it's a 4-year phase, and you presented them to the board.
No, Senator. We did a 2015 budget, which was purely a 1-year plan.
So you actually made no attempt whatsoever, despite releasing an 18-month 2016 rollout plan. You made no attempt to estimate any costs for your business past I think it's what, June next year.
Yeah. As I
Could
said,
I indicate? I thought Mr.
sorry.
Morrow did indicate, just so you know, and I'm not trying to catch you out, but I thought Mr. Morrow indicated to the committee that that sort of information was calculated and was provided to the board.
As far as I understand, Senator, at board meetings I've been at,
Well, a corporate plan like this would have had to go across your desk, and calculations in the manner of which I'm talking about would have had to go across your desk. So I'm asking you to confirm or contradict, but I'm being very upfront about it. I'm not trying to catch you. I thought Mr. Morrow indicated that revenue figures and the like had been calculated, but he just wasn't going to give them to us.
yeah, I think we might be talking two different things.
Yeah, no, that's why I'm trying to be very precise.
Sure. So what we have is the 2015 budget, which is what you see in the corporate plan.
So
what we also have.
Sorry, keep going. You paused, and so I was going to ask another question, but please keep going.
Not a problem. What we also have is the strategic review. We are, as I said in my opening statement to the Senate Estimates Committee, we're currently working on a longer range plan, which will expand on the strategic review and will also be possible to do once the final deals are done with a certain large telecommunication company.
No, I appreciate that you're
Sorry, just to finish. What I think Mr. Morrow was referring to is when one looks at a rollout plan, one considers many things, including potential revenues in certain areas and certain costs.
Yeah, they're usually referred to as forecasts.
Forecasts of costs and revenues, correct?
Yes. So,
but that's different. That's different from doing a long-term plan.
So you have no idea what the forecasts are for your revenue over the next 4 years.
We are currently working on a long-range operating and financial plan, which will form part of the 2015 to 18 corporate plan.
So I repeat, you have no idea. You're the chief financial officer of a company that is looking to spend $40 billion, and you have no idea of your forecasted revenue or forecasted costs past 2015.
To say we have no idea is not correct.
Well,
we have a strategic review that was done in November, December last year. On top of that, we need to do, obviously, a detailed long-term plan, which is what we're working on.
Thank you for continuing to answer that question, and I'd now like you to answer the question I asked. Do you have forecasts of your revenue and your costs past June 2015? Did you have created them? You must have created them. Otherwise, even as a government business enterprise, you'd be in jail as a CFO. You couldn't actually attend a board meeting and say to your board members, I'm sorry, I don't know. You have to accept that that will be a farcical conversation.
What we have is, the best estimates we have at this stage is the 2013 Strategic Review Plan, which is a long-range forecast.
Look, I don't accept that that's the only thing you've got. I'm not asking you about that. I'm asking you if you have got forecasts for your plan, because it's quite clear and has been demonstrated, and I hope that you haven't had to read the Hansard from the other day, but we had a lengthy discussion about all the changes that have been made by decisions that you've taken since that strategic plan was introduced. So, Mr. Roux, you must model those changes. You actually would not be able to keep your job in a board meeting if you turned up and said, I have no forecasts whatsoever and no costs or revenue forecasts whatsoever. You must have prepared them and submitted them to the board.
Well, Senator, I'm sorry to disappoint you, but once again, the best estimates we have is the strategic review. We are working on exactly the detail you're asking me about. And
You're not
we will have
working
that
on it. You're not working on it. You've already prepared a corporate plan, which you've said we've done a budget and then we tacked on the strategic review, even though we know we've made substantial changes. So has not one board member asked you for a revenue forecast beyond June 2015? Not one board member has asked you the costs that you are going to incur after June 2015. Not one board member.
Board members are very aware of the process we're going through, which is a very detailed and long process to prepare long-range forecasts at the level that you're asking about. That's what discussions have been about.
You do understand that ultimately, and you will fight it all the way, but ultimately you will not be able to keep the minutes of the NBN Co's board secret. They will become public. Malcolm Turnbull FOI'd NBN Co minutes of board meetings. So I'm advising you of that so you understand that if you give evidence that's contradictory to what your board minutes are, that is actually a serious problem for you, Mr. Roux. You can't hide behind the anonymity of, oh, don't worry, they won't find out what was said and what documents that you've prepared and submitted to the board. Now, you'll be very clear about that. I know you've not worked for a GBE before. Mr. Turnbull successfully sought an FOI on board minutes and documents.
Again, Senator, we're working on the plan that you're talking about.
Yeah, no, I agree, but you've been working on it. How long have you been at the company?
Since the 1st of July.
Okay, so you've been there nearly 6 months and you've been incapable in 6 months of calculating a revenue or a cost for the company that you work for.
Senator, we're going through the process to do exactly what you're asking.
And it's taken you 6 months. What would you do to an employee who said it's going to take me 6 months to give a calculation of the revenue for the company and the costs for the company, and still not have them after 6 months?
The revenues and the costs you're talking about are in the strategic review.
No, they are not. That is a completely untrue statement, Mr. Roux.
And we are updating those.
And after
at the moment, as I said in my last opening statement to the committee, we are working on a long-range plan.
Look, let's be very clear. You're now saying the most up-to-date revenue and costs for your company were prepared in December 2013. That's your evidence to this committee.
At this moment in time, that is the best set of numbers we have.
That is an extraordinary statement from the Chief Financial Officer of a $40 billion company. An absolutely extraordinary statement that you know that any proper governance being used by your board would see you dismissed if you walked into your board meeting and said that.
Point of order, Chair.
Yes, Senator Ruston.
I really don't think that the senator suggesting that the witness should be dismissed from his organisation.
No, that's not what I said.
You just said that, Senator Conroy.
I said the board would dismiss him.
Okay.
I didn't say I would.
All right, semantic. You have just made an allegation that you believe that the board of NBN Co should be sacking Mr. Roux. I think that is completely out of line, and I think that you should at least rephrase your question, or maybe, just for the interests of actually getting some information, change your lines of questioning because it's becoming very tedious.
No, I just want to get absolutely on the public record that the Chief Financial Officer at NBN Co claims 6 months into the job that he has not done an update of revenue and forecasts for the company and that the numbers that they're working from are 12 months old. I think that should be on the public record.
That's actually not what I said. What I said was the most up-to-date... what I said was we were working on a long-range plan, Senator, to get exactly the information you're talking about.
But I think...
there is work in progress.
Sorry, I just want to clarify. My interpretation of what you've said is that in terms of what's available on the public record for those forecasts, there is nothing other than what was prepared in December of 2013, even though you may be working on it. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Thank you.
I find it extraordinary that the board has not asked you for an updated figure in nearly 12 months. I find that an extraordinary indictment of the board. The board of NBN Co have not asked the Chief Financial Officer to update a forecast in nearly 12 months since the last figure. So your evidence is no forecasts of costs, no forecasts of revenues have gone to NBN Co's board. And they haven't asked you for an update.
Senator, there is a difference between work in progress and completed work. I never said there wasn't work in progress. I've made it clear in my evidence at the start of the last Senate estimates was work in progress.
Now, I appreciate you can pretend that using the words work in progress will maybe protect you from a lawsuit, but I don't think it protects you from ridicule in public opinion, Mr. Roux. It is clear what is going on here.
Senator Conroy?
It is clear you are in a position where the board, and this continues to be your evidence, the board has got no figures from you that relate to costs and revenues.
I think we've established that.
Okay. Now, other than the revised equity and debt profiles and 7 months' worth of financial and deployment metrics, your corporate plan provides nothing of substance. It does not include deployment metrics for the required 3 years, only 2014-15. The financial assumptions for financial years 16 and 17 are missing, apart from a few revenue, CapEx and OpEx assumptions that have been chucked in from the strategic review. There are no details about contracts executed or amounts compared to the 2013 to 16 corporate plan at about 140 pages. This corporate plan at 60 pages is, I'm sorry, a joke, and I would be embarrassed as a minister to put it into the public domain. I said as a minister, that's not for you.
You put an extraordinary amount of things in the public domain when you were the minister that were embarrassing.
So if I can just keep going,
Senator Conroy, if you could move to questions.
How is it that nearly 15 months since the policy change and about 12 months since the strategic review, that NBN Co is still not in a position to provide its own board with concrete forecasts beyond 7 months? That was a question.
Sorry, I was trying to work out your 7 months. I understand that. Once again, Senator, it's really, I'm sorry, it's really the same answer. We are currently trying to negotiate some large contracts, as you know. There are unknowns at the moment. The best information we have at the moment for the public domain, in fact, the best information we have at the moment is the strategic review for the years beyond 15. We have a budget for 15, and that is included in the corporate plan.
But you've announced a rollout plan for 18 months, so I'm absolutely confused how you can announce a rollout plan for 18 months but only have a budget for 7. Because,
Senator, this is a business that goes beyond 1 year, obviously, which is why you're asking me about long-range plans.
Well, I don't think a two-year forecast or a 3-year forecast is actually a long-range plan, but you might think that.
Well, more than 1 year planned.
No, a 1-year budget is a 1-year budget. The fact that after 12 months since the last strategic review, which your own company, if you looked at the last evidence, and I apologise for inviting you to do so, but we demonstrated all of the places where NBN Co has made decisions which are different to the corporate plan. And Mr Morrow was quite clear, we've made these different assumptions. You must know, if you make a different assumption, what the cost and the revenue implications are of making those different assumptions. And there were many that we discussed on Tuesday. But apparently you don't know.
There will be many different assumptions. there will be ongoing things, including the negotiations with the various telecommunication companies. That is why we need a robust, long-range plan, and that's what we're working on.
You have an estimate. You have to have a budget, okay? Not the strategic plan. You have to have a budget for what you think you're going to spend. You have to have an estimate. See, the disadvantage you have is I have sat through the entire process of what you are denying happens. I have sat through creating and watching them being created, NBN Co, corporate plans and forecasts. I know exactly how the system works. I know exactly what numbers are generated by your computer. And for you to suggest to this committee that you haven't plugged any information into the computer that has spat out some estimated costs of an FTTN rollout, an estimate, I'm not saying the exact cost, but you must know, you budget to spend money. You must have inputted information into the computer that has generated more than a 1-year forecast. So what I'm seeking to establish is that this information has actually been created. I accept you're saying you're not giving it to us. I accept you're saying you haven't given it to the board, you haven't given it to the ministers. I'm prepared to accept that on face value. I'm not prepared to accept that the CFO of a company worth $40 billion has not generated those numbers for his own information.
Senator, I hate to be repetitive, but we are going through exactly the exercise you're talking about, exactly the exercise you have been through yourself, and it's work in progress.
No, I'm not disagreeing that it's a work in progress. I'm accepting the point that you make, but I'm also not accepting that that process doesn't generate a set of numbers and that the board would have to be, not even asleep would be a description. It would have to be comatose and buried, not to be saying to you, we want to see this information. You've had 6 months, the company has had 12 months, and your proposition is that you yourself have not pressed a button with a computer and created a spreadsheet of your costs, your anticipated costs, not the exact costs of contracts being signed, but that you haven't created a budget for the costs of an FTTN rollout, the budgets for the cost of an HFC rollout, or the budgets for a new OSS BSS network. You can't not have done that and be a credible CFO, Mr. Roux. That's just, I mean, I've sat next to CFOs at NBN Co and watched them press buttons. Oh, look, there's a spreadsheet kicked out, but you're telling me you've not entered any data. I even know that I can probably, if I dredge my memory and get some old papers out, tell you the name of the system you're working from. And it's like, I put in a number, oh, there's 4 years has come out. And
Senator
you're going, no, that's not what's happened, Senator Conroy.
Please.
No, can you actually ask Senator Conroy that we don't need the histrionics and pushing buttons and popping things out? He is just belligerently badgering the witness.
I don't think I'm being belligerent.
You are being extraordinarily belligerent.
I'm being persistent, but I don't think I'm being belligerent. Mr. Roux looks like he's doing fine.
Well, he's doing fabulously well, but the whole point is that I actually...
You've got a fan at this end, Mr. Roux, you're doing okay.
Yeah, well, I'm afraid
Stop
you
blushing.
don't, Senator Conroy. Are we going to spend an hour asking the same question, or are we actually going to enter into some other realm of discussion?
No,
because since I've been sitting here,
discuss.
you have not asked anything but one simple question.
We are here to discuss the corporate plan.
Well, could you discuss it?
Well, Mr. Roux says one doesn't exist. That's the problem, you say. So I'm trying to understand how one can't exist.
Senators, if you want to debate this, can you do it in another place? Right now, we're in a line of questioning from Senator Conroy. Senator Conroy has the call.
Thank you.
Senator Ruston, if you don't like the line of questioning, I will allocate time to you to ask your own questions.
So, the corporate plan, and I'm assuming you've got a copy in front of you. You've got Mr. Macaulay. He's an expert on providing this information. Page 49.
Thank you.
No, you're redundant, Mr. Macaulay. You're too slow there.
Wow, he's got a corporate plan.
Now, NBN Co is, and I'm quoting now, NBN Co is not in a position to generate forecasts with a reasonable degree of confidence for FY16 and 17. What that says to me in that statement is you have generated numbers. And you've looked at them and go, well, but I'm sorry, that's what it says. Not in a position to generate forecasts with a reasonable degree of confidence, which implies that you have generated numbers, Mr. Roux. which quite sensibly you must have.
Senator, once again, we are going through a process which involves many, many people in the company, from all parts of the company, working together to generate long-range plans. And part of those long-range plans are operating results and financial forecasts.
Yeah, Mr. Rue.
We are not finished that exercise by a long way.
Mr. Rue, on page 49 of your corporate plan that you personally have prepared, signed off, forwarded to the board, forwarded to the minister, it says you are not in a position to generate forecasts with a reasonable degree of confidence. Have you generated forecasts?
Senator, the forecasts we have are the strategic review.
No, that's not what you said. That's not what you've said in this sentence, Mr. Rue. This sentence contradicts almost everything you've said so far.
I don't think it does, Senator. It says we're not in a position to generate forecasts, and at this stage, we're working on it.
No, that is not what it says, Mr. Rue, and that is the point. It says with a reasonable degree of confidence. Now, for you to make an assessment that the forecasts aren't with a reasonable degree of confidence, you've got to have generated a forecast to look at to make that statement. Have you generated forecasts? Otherwise, how can you say your forecasts don't have a reasonable degree of confidence?
I'm sorry, I hate to be repetitious, but it's work in progress, Senator.
Did you practice that for a long time before this hearing?
I practiced nothing, Senator.
How reliable is the equity profile you've provided on page 51 of the corporate plan if you have no confidence in your forecasts for FY 2016 and 2017? Page
51, the equity profile? At the top of the page, you mean, Senator?
Yeah, it's the equity profile I hope we're both talking about. The point I'm making is if you have no confidence in your forecasts for 16 and 17, how reliable is that equity profile?
The equity profile for FY 10 to 14 are actuals. The equity profile for 15 is our estimate, our budget, if you will, for this year. And as it clearly states, from 16 on are assumptions.
So we shouldn't have any confidence, any reasonable degree of confidence in your equity profile there, because they're based on assumptions which are no longer valid, because you're doing new assumptions.
They're based upon the strategic review, which is the best forward numbers we have, Senator.
Well, as I said, if you look at the conversations that we had, you've clearly made and agreed have made substantive changes to the strategic plan. You have made them. Mr. Morrow conceded it. The other officers at the table, I don't know how you could have done that, because you've got no forecast of your costs or your revenues of making those important strategic changes. But you've made them because they must have sounded good. Were there pretty pictures in the presentations? Because normally when you make a change to the corporate plan, you model the impact on the company.
Once again, Senator, we're working through many things at the moment to prepare long-range plans, and that will be incorporated in the corporate plan 15 to 18.
What's the likelihood that the equity numbers in the May budget will need to be changed in the 2015-16 budget?
At this stage, I think it's a reasonable indication, but as I said, once again, we're working through that, Senator.
So you're prepared to say that that's reasonable, but nothing else, no other forecast would be reasonable?
Senator, we're working through it.
That's a very selective approach. The data that you need to work out what your equity profile is unreasonable, but the equity profile that it's based on is reasonable.
Senator, we are working through it.
Now, the OPEX number for FY 2017 on page 49, $4.1 billion, that's a pretty big number. I take it that's just been put in there from the strategic review?
Which number are you referring to?
The OPEX number for FY 2017.
Yes, that will be from the strategic review.
So it's the same number.
I'd have to go back and check, but I believe so.
Now, what proportion of the network do you assume will be complete by FY 2017?
I don't have that in front of me, Senator.
You have no idea how much of the network you'll have built in 2 and a bit years' time.
I don't
You're
have
the
the
Chief
data
Financial
in front of me,
Officer of NBN Co, and you can't answer a simple question like, what proportion of the network do you assume will be complete by FY 2017?
Senator, I don't have it in front of me, sorry.
You don't have it, or you don't know it?
I don't have it in front of me, Senator.
Okay, well,
presumably it's in a strategic review.
Yeah, well, Mr Macaulay's right next to you, and those very exciting tablets and mobile phones can get you that information. You're able to, and you're at NBN Co headquarters. Surely you can, someone
Is it in
there.
the strategic review, Senator?
According to the strategic review, I'll help you out here. You will be about halfway. The strategic review forecasts that by the end of calendar year 16, you will be about 47% complete. So, do you stand by that number?
The best estimate I have, Senator, is the strategic review at this stage.
So, for the next hour and a half, if I ask you any question, your answer is going to be whatever was in the strategic review is the best I've got. Is there any information I can ask you about that you will not answer that to?
I don't know how I answer that question.
Yes, probably is the quickest way. So your OPEX in 2017 is assumed to be 4.1 billion for a half-completed network. So I'm confused. And I'm not going to allow you to say, I'm sorry, I didn't write the strategic review. You've been looking at it for 6 months. So I want to understand how you spend $4.1 billion, but you half complete the network.
Yeah, my expectation is, without having it again in front of me, will be as we disconnect, as customers get disconnected, there are certain payments made. And I believe that will be in the OPEX number.
So you're forecasting a half-completed network, and you think you'll have spent only $4.1 billion. That just seems like a very small number of OPEX for a half-completed network. But
Sorry, that's an annual number, Senator. I don't think that's cumulative.
yeah, no, I'm coming to the next year in a minute. So what OPEX number does the strategic review assume for 2018?
I don't have that in front of me, Senator.
Mr Macaulay, can you help? You did reach for the corporate review just before. I'm happy to keep going while Mr Macaulay looks. You were about to flick through the corporate review before I helped you before.
The strategic review.
Strategic review, sorry, yes. No, we wouldn't find anything if you opened the corporate plan. When does NBN Co assume that OPEX will peak? In what year?
Again, Senator, I don't have that in front of me, sorry. But I would have thought
Chief Financial
it would
Officer.
it would be close to the end of the rollout, Senator.
Do you know what it will peak at?
Again, I don't have that in front of me.
Well, Mr Macaulay's making notes. He can hopefully be flicking through it for you. Now, in the corporate plan, NBN Co makes a big deal of tapping debt markets. At this point, the corporate plot are going to be involved, Mr Rue. The 2014-17 corporate plan states on page 51 that since the publication of the 2012-15 corporate plan, NBN Co has continued to review its debt funding assumptions and to hold discussions with a number of major domestic and international financial institutions to assess NBN Co's future debt funding options. Does that ring a bell? That's from the
yes,
corporate.
it does.
That's from the corporate plan.
It's on page 51, I think.
Yeah, no, that's what I said. Page 51. Yep. So I'm just confused. That's pretty strange language, and what I mean by that is, and I'll quote: "Since the publication of the 2012-15 corporate plan, has NBN Co held any of these discussions since the 8th of September 2013?
Yes.
What's the result of those discussions?
Well, I can't tell you I can't tell you of any meetings I wasn't in, so I don't know what Mr. Payne did before me. But you could appreciate someone in my position would want to meet various banks and discuss with them the NBN business, because as you can see in the future there will be a need to raise debt. So the discussions have been no more from the ones I've been in, is to reacquaint myself with many people I know and to discuss NBN.
So have you done any presentations to them?
No.
So you're just chatting?
Essentially, yes.
No presentations, no pieces of paper, no documents?
I have given no documents, no presentations to my knowledge.
Have you had any PowerPoint for you to speak from?
No.
So what, you just walk in, sit down, no briefcase, no iPad, no nothing, you just say, "Hi, good to see you again"?
Well, that's probably a fair summary of the first couple of seconds, yes.
And what do you discuss after that?
We discuss NBN in terms of the MTM approach, in terms of new management we've got, in terms of preparing long-range plans, and the obvious need to raise debt in the future.
Now, Mr Turnbull, when he was in opposition just prior to the election, held a press conference at Fox Sports Studios. You might have seen it on TV. And he indicated that he had a fully costed plan. Already fully costed, he boasted. Has he given you a copy of that plan as the Chief Financial Officer?
I haven't received anything from Mr Turnbull.
Could you take on notice and ask him for a copy of that fully costed plan?
I can do that, Senator.
Thank you. So I would imagine that in the absence of an explicit government guarantee, that private debt markets would like a little more certainty than NBN Co saying not in a position to generate forecasts with a reasonable degree of confidence for FY16 and 17. Or have you met some merchant bankers that I haven't met?
No, I couldn't agree more, Senator.
Yeah, so no merchant bank would give you any money based on your published corporate plan. Is that a fair statement?
That's a fair statement.
Have you asked the government for an explicit guarantee?
No, Senator. I'm working on the basis there isn't one.
No, I was just asking if you had. Now,
No,
Exhibit 9-7 on page 51 of your corporate plan indicates that you have revised your debt assumptions since the strategic plan. It looks to me that you are now assuming that you will access nearly $1 billion less in debt in 2018 than you assumed in the strategic review. You assumed 2.6 and indicative profile 1.7. Why?
Because, Senator, as I took you through, I think, at the Senate estimates, the equity funding arrangements have changed. So no longer do we have 6 months cash on hand. And secondly, there were working capital. We didn't use as much working capital as was assumed in 14 and 15. So it's no more than a shifting of the same amount between years.
It's a quorum.
Are we suspending?
So it's a quorum. Bad luck. I know you got your hopes up there, but it's just a quorum. It means you have to lose Senator Rushton, though.
Oh, I understand. I thought you meant for this committee.
No, no,
It's
no.
all right. I won't desert you, Mr. Roo. There's at least somebody here who's
It's the
nice.
same. She's
I can't see
refusing
you,
to
though.
leave. She's refusing to leave. It's
She's Dougie.
now, I am confused how you can continue to move these figures around, given you don't have any costs and revenues, but you seem perfectly capable of moving around equity profiles. But
All it is moving the same. It's moving the same amount of money between years.
so it seems to be the same story in the equity profile. Your public equity requirements are being pushed out to later years. Is NBN Co
Correct.
maintaining that these revisions do not reflect in any way the deferral of any capital expenditure to later years compared to the assumptions in the strategic review?
No, it does. It doesn't assume any changes to the capex profile going forward. All it is reflecting that at the end of fiscal 15, the equity in the strategic review drawdown was 15.6, and the indicative profile is 13.6. So the 2 million just gets moved to future years. So there's no change, in other words, in spend in future years assumed.
Okay, now Mr. Steiger appeared before us the other day, as you know. He seemed to know exactly what he needed to purchase for the rollout of an HFC network. Does that sound right? He even told us how many you needed to buy.
Well, Mr. Steiger and his team, again, are part of the people I spoke about who are involved in preparing long-range plans.
Yeah, no, but I think
So
he said he needed 200 CMTS, and apologies if I've got the acronym the wrong way around. And the rack price at Cisco is around $700,000 to $800,000. No one pays the rack price, he said. We'll get a better deal, which is good news for taxpayers. Now, he seems to have a fair bit of expert information there. And you've prepared no costs on an HFC rollout plan, even though you've got the bloke that's got a lot of experience in doing it, reeling off costs to this committee. You still have got no costs for an HFC rollout component.
It is CMTS, firstly. Secondly, Mr. Steiger is very experienced in this area. But what you just described is one part of many, many costs that will go into a HFC rollout.
Yeah, no, I get that. But he also talked at length about other bits that were needed. He seemed to have a very good idea about how to roll out one, given he has rolled out them, and he seemed to know roughly what the costs were, given he's rolled them out before. I find it extraordinary he's not spoken to you about that.
He is one,
After
as I
6
said,
months
of many
in the
people.
job.
He is one of many people who are part of preparing long-range
He's the main
plans.
man. He's not
Well,
one
in
of many
HFC.
people. You've hired him specifically because of his expertise in this area. He demonstrated it quite well to us. He detailed, we actually asked him, what do you need to do the job? And he went through it all. You can look at the Hansard transcript. He identified the parts, he identified the estimate you've made on lead-ins. He went through the whole rollout phase. But at no stage after 6 months have you got a costing of an HFC rollout based on the experience and expertise of Mr. Steiger.
We are working on that, along with many other things.
So after 6 months, he's been there for not quite 6 months, so I won't be unfair to him.
No, he's been in this role, I think, for 6 weeks.
No, a bit longer than that.
Oh, maybe it is.
A bit longer than that. But, I mean, you bought him, you're paying him $1 million plus for his expertise, and he hasn't been able to give you any sort of indication, and nobody else in the company has been able to give you any sort of indication of what it's going to cost to roll out the HFC network.
Senator, there's many moving parts in this, some of which you talked about. There is the operation side, there is the IT side. There's many pieces we're putting together.
Now, Telstra indicated in its 2014 annual report, released at its full year results in August, the renegotiation of the definitive agreements is progressing well within an agreed commercial framework but the complexity of the arrangements and the need to consider all of the elements of the definitive agreements means the renegotiations are still incomplete. Telstra also noted this agreed commercial framework anticipates a change in the approach taken in respect of the copper and HFC network assets from staged decommissioning to NBN Co owning some or all of such assets progressively as the NBN is rolled out. That's what Mr Thodey, I think, said, or the Telstra, no, the actual annual report, one that wouldn't get a visit from the corporate policeman. So it's remarkable they can produce a set of figures, but you can't. Now, is this agreed commercial framework simply a statement of government policy, the transfer of ownership of the copper and HFC networks, or has an actual agreement formalising this agreed commercial framework been signed?
Okay, two things. Just to correct something you said earlier, we also have the 2014 annual report.
Yeah, let's not go there.
We do. It's here, Senator.
No, I know that. I'm glad you recognise it.
The second piece of your question is we are still working on that transaction, Senator. I'm sorry, I can't comment.
No, you shouldn't misunderstand. On the Telstra negotiation issue, I'm perfectly relaxed you're not able to say anything. I was in exactly the same place. I totally understand what dealing with Telstra is like. You've dealt with them before. You used to be in 50% partnership with them. So you've got probably more experience, but I've had a little bit of experience myself. Love their lawyers. Glad you're having a good time. So, when do you expect that to be completed?
The Telstra renegotiation?
Yeah.
We still hope to complete it before Christmas.
Before Christmas? Any idea? Can I expect to see the Sunday Telegraph with an exclusive leaked by the Minister on Sunday the 14th?
Not if you're in Melbourne.
Senator, it'll be done, hopefully, before Christmas.
Should I get up early and look online?
Senator, I can't comment.
You know, the ship estate always leaks
from hopefully done before Christmas.
The ship estate always leaks from the top. That's always one of the problems. Now, I had a discussion with Mr Morrow the other day, and I appreciate he was being coy until the 14th, but in previous committees, both you and him have indicated that you would only buy the parts of the network as you needed them. Is that still your position?
Sorry, Senator, I haven't commented on that at previous committees.
No, so I think you were sitting next to Mr Morrow when he did indicate that. He's now
again,
indicated
Senator,
something different.
Senator, I'm not in a position to comment.
Now, is NBN Co considering entering into any cost plus 10% or cost plus any percent agreements with Telstra? For maintenance, for whatever?
Again, Senator, there are many discussions with Telstra. I cannot comment.
You familiar with cost plus contracts?
Yes, Senator.
To my knowledge, which is a little out of date, as you understand, NBN Co had absolutely refused to enter into any cost plus agreements. Is that wise policy?
Senator, the wise, when you say policy, I assume you mean for company to operate, is to do the best it can do by shareholders. But I can make no comment on any discussions with Telstra.
I mean, could I indicate, I think the committee would be very concerned. I think taxpayers would be horrified if you were shoveling money out of the door to Telstra with cost-plus contracts. That would be an extraordinary departure of practice by NBN Co if it was to enter into those sorts of agreements, Mr. Rue. I'm shocked you're not saying, no, we would never do such a thing with any company, never mind Telstra.
What I'm saying is I cannot comment on anything to do with Telstra. What I can assure you is no one is more conscious than me of the need to manage taxpayers' money properly.
Now, you've argued that you need flexibility in each rollout area for your design rules. I take it you would not be attempting to negotiate terms that would tie you down to a particular technology. So you would be saying in this area versus this area.
Sorry, Senator, I don't understand your question.
In the past, Mr. Morrow indicated that you wouldn't need Telstra's copper network in an area that the HFC footprint existed. Is that still the case?
I would have thought so, Senator, but there are better people than me in the company to answer that.
No, it's a question of whether you're going to pay to buy a copper network in a footprint of 3.4 million homes that you actually don't need.
I see.
It's a very simple question.
Well, again, Senator, I can't comment on anything to do with Telstra negotiations.
No, I'm just asking you it's more of a generic question. Would it be, I would consider it an extraordinary waste of taxpayers' money if you bought a copper network in the HFC footprint. It would be extraordinary. You're not planning on using it. Why would you buy it?
Well, Senator, I'm sorry, I cannot comment on anything to do with this.
You can't comment on whether or not you would buy a copper network in a footprint of 3 million people that you have no intention of using.
Senator, we're hoping to complete our negotiations in the next couple of weeks. Until then, Senator, I can't comment on anything like this because it could be misconstrued, Senator. I hate to mislead
I think taxpayers deserve to know whether you're planning on buying a copper network in an area where you said you will not be rolling out FTTN, that you will absolutely be rolling out HFC. I think taxpayers are entitled to an absolute guarantee from you that you wouldn't do that. What on earth justification could you have for purchasing a copper network in an area where you're deploying HFC only?
Taxpayers can be assured that NBN team, executive directors have adequately discharged their duties to manage taxpayers' money appropriately.
No, it would be a scandal, Mr. Rue, if you bought a network that you didn't need. It will be a scandal. It will be one of the most extraordinary abuses of taxpayers' money that I would ever witnessed in 20 years in public office, if you bought a network that you have no intention of using.
Senator, I assure you we're very conscious of our obligations to the Australian taxpayer.
I mean, I'm hoping that you could say, now, of course we wouldn't be that silly, Senator. I can't see how that could be construed as anything. The fact you don't want to comfort taxpayers that you're not purchasing copper network in 3.4 million home footprint would, I'm sure, go a long way for people to be relaxed. Nothing further to add?
Nothing than to say that we're very conscious of taxpayers, the welfare of taxpayers, Senator, and the need to roll out the network to all of Australia.
I think Senator Billick has a few questions. I might just...
Yeah, thanks.
I just passed her because she has to go, so I'll just pause for a moment.
Thanks, Senator Conroy. I've got to go and do chamber duty, so I've been looking at the rollout plan list, but I can't find any construction time frames. So I could see the broad rollout areas and the technology to be used and the estimated numbers of premises, but I can't find specific construction start timeframes, other than that it'll start before June 2016. Construction will start before June 2016. But I note that the member for Corangamite has published information on her website that contains that information. So are you able to tell me how she might have got that information?
I'm sorry, Senator, I'd love to help you. I don't know. I don't know if that's correct. I haven't seen the article.
Okay. Well, are you able to tell me...
Can I take that on notice, Senator?
You can. Look, I'd appreciate that because I'd really like to know why this information hasn't been released for every rollout region listed on the rollout plan. And I'd really like you to, seeing as how you're taking it on notice, can you give me the detailed suburb information for all of Australia, including the dates that construction will commence, including street and premises level if you have it? And can you also tell me when the rollout maps might be updated?
Yes, Senator, can we take that on?
Yeah, I'm very interested that it's, I can't find it everywhere, but obviously, a coalition MP seems to have that information. I would have thought it was fair for all members of the government or the Parliament to have that information.
Senator, I'll take that on notice. I'm sorry, I can't help you.
All right, thanks. Look, I have to go and do chamber duty now, so that was it for me. Thanks, Senator.
Thank you,
Conroy.
Senator Billick.
Thank you, Senator.
Now, in the past, NBN has indicated, and it was earlier this year, that due diligence would be undertaken on the copper network before acquiring it. Mr Rousselot, the resident village idiot down at NBN but boating companion...
Excuse me, Senator Conroy.
Thank you,
I withdraw.
Senator Smith. Thank you, Senator
I
Conroy.
withdraw.
We don't want to start talking about...
I hope you're paid more than him is all I'd say to you, Mr Roux, because I actually have confidence you could do your job. But Mr Rousselot said that the agreement will include a significant matter of due diligence that will be done on the networks that we would be able to secure access to. So that was what was stated on Hansard by Mr Rousselot. However, an answer to a question on notice submitted more recently states that NBN Co's aim is to ensure that any assets acquired represent value for money and where appropriate will undertake the necessary actions to determine this. That's a very different answer, Mr Roux, for billions of dollars of money being transferred to Telstra. Are you no longer going to engage, as Mr Rousselot promised, significant due diligence to be done on the networks that you intend to use?
Senator, can I take that on notice to reconcile those two statements? I understand why you've asked.
I mean, you recognise they're quite substantively different statements.
Well, I understand why you've asked. Let me take that on notice, please.
Okay, and I appreciate that. What due diligence...
Sorry, Senator, can you help me here? Do you have the Quan number there, Senator?
Look, I'm sure someone... the Quan, just a second. The Quan is 64, 11 July. And the quote is budget estimates, transcript, page 160, just to give
Thank you.
Mr Macaulay a leg up. But, I mean...
You've saved Mr Macaulay some time, thank you.
Yep. But more fundamentally, Mr Roux, what due diligence are you undertaking before you sign that cheque on the on the 14th for the copper network? How much of the copper network has NBN Co inspected? Have you inspected any of the copper network?
Again, Senator, I would really do not want to comment on anything to do with...
No, I'm sorry, this isn't a comment about the negotiations. This is a comment...
I'm sorry, Senator, I think it is.
No, this is a comment about...
No, excuse me, Senator Conroy.
Due diligence.
Excuse me, Chair.
What due diligence are you undertaking?
Mr Roux has effectively said that the line of questioning that Senator Conroy is using could expose him in regards to the commercial negotiations that have been underway. So I do think that the taxpayers' interests are best served if Senator Conroy pursues a different line of questioning so as not to compromise any negotiations that may or may not be underway.
Thanks for your opinion. Back to the question, Mr. Rue.
Chair.
What due diligence have you undertaken?
Senator Smith, I don't think you have a formal point of order.
I'll try again.
Mr. Rue, what due diligence is NBN Co undertaken? This is not a question about your negotiations. This is a question with Telstra. It's a question about NBN Co and your due diligence. So what is the due diligence that you've taken? What have you done to assure yourself that the asset you are purchasing can do the job?
Senator, I'm sorry, I cannot comment.
That's a very prudent response, Mr. Rue.
Ignore the village idiots here too, Mr. Rue.
Senator Conroy, there is no need for that.
In the AFR a few weeks ago, Mr. Rue, David Buckingham, who I'm sure you heard of if you haven't met, the CEO of iiNet, said the following. He accused Telstra of failing to maintain its copper network because it's about to be sold to you. So this is Mr. Buckingham's view of a customer of Telstra on the copper network that you are planning on owning after the 14th of December. He said Telstra naturally is uninclined to spend lots of money on maintaining the copper right now when it is essentially is going to give some kind of access or ownership to the NBN, which is frustrating. Are you familiar with these statements?
No, I'm not, Senator, and you would have to ask Mr. Buckingham why he said that.
Well, he went on to say, because you may not have ever had contact with the copper network, but Mr. Buckingham and a whole lot of other people have, Mr. Rue, but you're signing the cheque. He said the network that Telstra owns around Perth is pretty much a mess, and the Telstra technicians seem only to be prepared to patch it up. They're told they can't replace it in a wholesale manner. He said, my neighbour has lost his landline 8 times in 2 years, and I've lost it 5 times in 2 years. So, Mr. Rue, it isn't good enough of you to say you won't tell us what due diligence you've done on an asset you're about to purchase. It's like going down to a used car yard and just going, I'll have that car, without looking under the bonnet. Nobody, not a CFO as experienced, as competent as you, would do that. It cannot possibly be that you have not done due diligence or that you're refusing to tell us what due diligence it is. What due diligence have you done on a network that one of the users of it today says is rubbish?
Well, Senator, you'd have to talk to Mr. Buckingham about his view, but once again, I cannot comment.
So, an existing user of a network you're about to purchase has stated publicly that Telstra are not maintaining it, not keeping it up to scratch, and you don't care. It's just somebody else.
No, I think Mr. Rue said that you should ask that question to Mr. Buckingham.
No.
That's just Mr. Buckingham's response.
You're going to vote to buy this copper network. It's going to hang round your neck. But Mr. Rue is signing the cheque. He's a major reseller of services on the network you're about to purchase, Mr. Rue, and he is scathing of it and its state of disrepair. And you won't give us the remotest confidence that you've done any due diligence on this network. Why is that?
Because, Senator, we are in long negotiations with Telstra, and I cannot comment on anything to do with it.
Well, Mr. Rue, the Australian taxpayer...
I would hate to compromise anything, Senator.
That you're not compromising anything and you know it. You're using a convenient excuse to avoid providing information to this Senate committee. On this one, on others,
sorry, Senator.
I accept your answer. I absolutely accept your answer, and I've said so. But on the question of due diligence, that's a responsibility of yours that's irrelevant. Irrelevant to the negotiation. And you are not prepared to provide a single scrap of comfort to the Senate, the Parliament of Australia, or the people of Australia, or the people watching and listening to this broadcast. No, not.
Senator, your question is not irrelevant to the negotiation.
So I find it extraordinary. And I'll be very clear, I personally think you're treating this committee now with contempt and you're hiding behind false arguments. Do not answer your question, Mr. Roux. It's been just my opinion. Senator Smith won't agree, but you should be very clear.
Don't agree.
You should be very clear. If you want to purchase this pig in a poke and then try and put lipstick on it later, you can expect that you will be held responsible by the people of Australia. Now,
I must admit, Senator Conroy, I must admit, I think I was in the room when the copper network was described as 5 minutes to midnight, and that was about 8 years ago.
Yeah, your current chair's representatives sat in front of Senator Lundy 10 years ago and said the copper network was at 5 minutes to midnight. That was the person who is the current chair of your company. But I don't think I've got any more. Senator Smith, did you want to make a contribution?
No.
Any questions?
If you want to give me just a moment, I'll just check that there's no other work or questions.
Oh, well,
that
perhaps
we
I
need.
can.
Just if you can.
Yeah, Senator Conroy, could I ask a question with regard to the copper network? What's your up-to-date analysis of the presence of small, medium and large pair gain systems, and do you have a current budget allocated against the mitigation of those systems in the network?
The answer to the first question I would have to take on notice and pass to my colleague. The answer to your second question is that those sort of issues are part of the long-range planning that we're doing that we talked about earlier.
What analysis has been done about the gauge of the copper in the network, given it's the various, there's quite a large range of quality, and somewhat ironically some of the older copper is of a bigger gauge and therefore capable of carrying more data. Do you have access to that kind of intel about the state of the copper network?
I'll have to take that on notice then.
Okay, well, Mr. Roux, given that you've refused to answer a single question about the corporate plan, I will look forward to having further discussions with you, and you've probably condemned yourself to having to have another committee hearing after the 14th when you want to pretend you haven't bought a pig in a poke and you'll have lots of lipstick to put on it. Thank you.
Thank you very much for appearing this afternoon, Mr. Roux. I appreciate it, and thank you to the staff of the committee, and I'd like to take this opportunity, given it's our last hearing before Christmas, to wish everybody a very Merry Christmas.
Thank you, Senator. Much appreciated.
This committee is now adjourned.